Hey, what's up, y'all, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. A lot of questions this week, so we're just going to jump right into it. This first question comes from Carson, who says, love the videos. What are the chances that Chubb will have a 1,000-yard season soon with Kareem Hunt and the new restructuring on the passing game with Amari and Watson? I think Chubb is in for a pretty good year this year. I would buy high on Nick Chubb right now for fantasy value. Here's why. Yes, his carries might go down because you're going to be willing to throw the ball more, and you can win the game throwing the ball more. At least you would assume it. But also, there's going to be, or there could be that portion of the year where he plays and there is no Watson there because of the suspension, right? Or there could also be a situation where, hey, Watson's out there, and just having a veteran quarterback out there, a quarterback who's better at seeing defenses and understanding what he's looking at, because one of the flaws with Baker has always been his ability to know what he's looking at defensively. That's definitely not a flaw for Watson. Watson is one of the better ones at that, especially for as many games as he played. That means that the checks are going to be better. The audibles, the hots are going to be better for not only the offensive line when Deshaun's setting up these protections, but also for Nick Chubb, right? For running through these things, right? Because sometimes Baker checks into bad run plays or bad protections, and then that ends up compiling on itself. With Watson, I don't think that's going to happen as much. So just those small things that aren't really things that get talked about a lot are things that Nick Chubb's going to benefit from, let alone the fact that he's not going to see as many stacked boxes as he did last year. So all of those things I think are going to combine for Nick Chubb. He might not have the most yards he's ever had in a season, but I think he's going to have the most efficient season in his career this upcoming year, because I think he's going to be really high on those yards per carry. I think he's going to be really high on those efficiency stats. But that's just my thoughts. Let me go to the next question. Ian, who says, which players do you expect to take a big step forward this season? Donovan People-Jones. That's who should take a big step, right? We kind of know what they have in Amari. Well, we know what they have in Amari Cooper, because Amari Cooper's kind of proven. And Anthony Schwartz, yes, he can take a big step, I think. But he also has some issues that I think are going to be issues even if Deshaun Watson's in there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, on the other hand, I think that Watson can do something with that, right? So that's who I would expect to take the biggest step forward, because sometimes Donovan was doing dumb stuff with the football, and other times Baker was just not seeing him, right? And that kind of added into this whole issue that they had with the pass catching last year. I would expect Donovan Peoples-Jones to take a big step. Maybe Anthony Schwartz does too, right? Because they really do believe in Anthony Schwartz over there. But in Deshaun, with the deep threat, we've seen what he's done with Will Fuller. But I would put my money on Donovan Peoples-Jones to take the biggest step this season, just because of the upgrade at the quarterback position. The next question comes from Pee Wee, who says, how concerned are you with the salary cap going forward? Watson's contract might cause the Browns to lose some key players. All right, so I've said this before, and now that we live in the reality of this, right, it's even more prevalent. To me, I think you would rather have the problems that you have where you have a quarterback that you want to pay this much money than if you have a quarterback that you don't, right? Like the problem with how we talk about quarterback money is we act like all the quarterback does is play quarterback. And yeah, and on some sense that is true. But what a quarterback does, and what a quarterback that's worth $35-40 million a year to $50 million a year, the reason why they're worth that money is because they cover up a lot of holes. Right? They fix a lot of things, right? There is a reason remember the Colts, the year before they got Andrew Luck, they won 2 games. The year they got Andrew Luck, they won like 10 or 11 games, right? A quarterback, a really good quarterback, is going to cover up your flaws. So it's worth that much money. So yes, the Browns might lose some key players. Maybe they lose Denzel Ward. Here's the thing. I don't think they were planning on keeping Denzel Ward, because even when they weren't paying a quarterback that much money, Ain't like they've been trying to extend Denzel Ward this whole time and stop because they traded for Watson, right? Like, I think Ward might be gone just because they think Ward's expendable. They have Newsome. When you look at this front office, they don't do things for the most part out of nowhere, right? They usually have a plan for what they're going to do. When they cut Shredder, they have Nick Harris that they drafted 2 years ago. When they cut Jack Conklin next year, which they will do, I'm pretty confident that they're going to cut Jack Conklin next year. It's because they drafted James Hudson 2 years earlier to that, right? Like, they have a plan. When they let Hunt go next year, which is probably likely, it's because they drafted Demetric Felton and they feel like he could step in, right? When they were comfortable letting Odell go, it's because they felt like they had a deep threat in Anthony Schwartz. They don't do anything without a backup plan. They don't go into situations without a plan B or without a replacement strategy. That's how this front office operates. You can look up and down the roster and go, okay, yeah, this is obvious how they operate. Like, whenever the Browns draft a player in a position and you're like, why did they draft that position? Wasn't necessarily an immediate need. It's a long-term thinking ideal right there that they're trying to do, right? They're trying to replace somebody in a couple of years rather than right now. And that's how this front office operates. And quite frankly, that's how good front offices operate. It's how Pittsburgh operates. It's how the Ravens operate. It's how all of these teams that everybody wants to be like operate. So I think that's smart. And when you look at how the Browns go at it, they're going to let some players go. And it looks like Denzel Ward, who, look, 2 years earlier, they drafted Greg Newsome, right? Denzel Ward's probably on his way out. That's probably what that situation is. I would not be surprised if the Browns spent a third-round pick on a running back this year, because in a couple of years, they might be willing to let another running back go. Like, this is how they operate. They do things 2 years in advance at the positions they want to replace. Now, quarterback's a completely different thing, right? That's a little bit harder to do that with, but in positions where they find that feasible to do, they will do. And that's what they're going to do. And yeah, so they're going to lose players because of the salary cap number. But the reality is, if you want to be a Super Bowl contending franchise, you were going to have to pay a quarterback at that amount of money anyways. So it's really not something that I'm going to complain about, because I'd rather have the quarterback that you think you could spend that kind of money on than have a $9 million quarterback and be throwing Case Keenum out there for 18 games. The next question comes from Anthony, who says, what are some good examples of what Deshaun will do better than Baker? As somebody who never really watched the Texans, I'd love a breakdown. Yeah, breakdown's coming. Now, my basic answer to this is, hey, from Browns fans who watch Joe Burrow and watch Baker Mayfield, what is it that you think Joe Burrow does better than Baker Mayfield? Okay, you think he sees the field better, he improvises better, he makes better reads, makes better checks, just plays a smarter game of football, and he's a little bit more athletic. That's the exact same thing that Deshaun Watson has over Baker Mayfield, right? Doesn't have arm strength, raw arm strength over Baker Mayfield, but his velocity isn't terrible, so it's not really that much of a factor. But yeah, he does all of those things better, right? This would be a similar, from a skill set standpoint, upgrade to what you would think that Joe Burrow does better than Baker Mayfield, right? Because I think we're all mostly in agreement here. I think there are some holdouts, but I think about 90% of us would agree that, hey, Joe Burrow's probably better than Baker Mayfield. And if we're at that agreement, what makes Joe Burrow better than Baker Mayfield is similar to the stuff that makes Deshaun Watson a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. Because I think Deshaun and Joe are very similar. I think Deshaun's a little bit more dynamic of a runner. But other than that, I think they're very similar. They're very, very, very similar. I think Deshaun also has a little bit stronger arm than Joe Burrow, but I think Joe Burrow's more accomplished, right? Joe Burrow in his second year got to the Super Bowl. Deshaun ain't been to the third round yet. So you got to give Joe his respects when it comes to that. But yeah, that's pretty much the difference, and that's the basic way I can explain it without going into detail into film yet. Again, I'm trying to get a good base of understanding and catch up on Deshaun Watson, but from what I've seen of him, that's pretty much the gist. The next question comes from William Zinn, who says, with the AFC being a gauntlet this year, what is the realistic number of games that Watson could be suspended for and still have a legit shot at making the playoffs? I have no idea what the guess this suspension is going to be if it happens, right? I think people are talking in foregone conclusions about this suspension. I have no idea. I have straight up no idea what to make of what the NFL makes of this situation. Because one, the NFL is historically inconsistent on these things. Like, there is no precedent to go after that can't be contrasted with a different, thing. So I have no idea what the NFL is going to make of this situation. And look, man, we've dealt with the NFL and their suspensions in the past. We know that they take forever to announce these things, and sometimes they don't announce them right away. Like, this is one of those things where I just don't feel comfortable speculating on, just because I am nowhere near qualified to tell you how many games I think he's going to. Everybody seems to say 6 to 8, but I think that's just what people are saying, right? That's just the thing that people are saying at this point. It comes out of no real precedent or basis. I have no idea. All I know, it's going to be a headline when it happens, no matter how many games it is or how little games, or if it is no games. It's going to be a headline. But as far as what that's going to be, I don't know. We dealt with this with Josh Gordon, right, where we were guessing what the NFL was going to do when it comes to suspension. Like, is it going to be 4 games? Is it going to be 2 games? Is it going to be appealed down to 1? Like, I have no idea. We're probably going to be in training camp talking about this. Like, I'm not going to try to guess what the NFL is going to make of this whole situation, because honestly, I don't even know what to make of the whole situation. So why would I expect them to have a definitive answer right now? The next question comes from TM Sonic, who says, can you explain what the post-June 1st designation means when it comes to somebody like Austin Hooper? So a post-June 1st designation means that you're not technically cut until June 1st because the team wants to save money, but we're going to cut you June 1st. And since we know that we're going to cut you June 1st to save money, we're going to allow you to technically sign with another team until you're technically cut. So it's basically restricted. That's not even restricted free agency. It's basically a 90-day no compete with no compete in there, right? Without any of the tampering requirements. So you aren't on the team, but you're technically still on the team. But to do right by you in free agency will let you talk to other teams and come into an agreement in principle to a deal with a new team, but that deal can't become official until June 2nd. Basically how it works, right? He's not officially released until June 2nd or June 1st, but since they don't want to have him miss out in free agency, both the Players Association and the team, they'll allow the player who's designated that to be able to negotiate elsewhere. That's pretty much what it means. It's a way so that both sides can get their cake and eat it too. Austin Hooper can hit free agency at the time you want to hit free agency to get the most money for him. And the team itself doesn't have to hold on to this player until June 1st, and they can cut him and save the money that they would after June 1st without having to hold him that long. It's a win-win for both sides, honestly. That's what the June 1st designation is. I hope that cleared it up if you've had questions. The next question comes from, do I believe in the rumors in OBJ and JARVIS returning? Do I think they're going to happen? I have less of a definitive idea of if they're going to happen. I do think that JARVIS is definitely interested in coming back. I think Odell, I think he's not closed off to it. I think he's definitely open to it. His market's going to be limited, and I don't think he sees coming back to Cleveland as a big deal. Now, if he does come back to Cleveland, it's going to destroy a lot of people's narratives about, Odell never wanted to be here. He never wanted to live in Cleveland. I never understood why it got to that place. I don't know why people who live in Cleveland, people who love Cleveland's first instinct when they talk about a free agent in Cleveland is to talk bad about the city, right? Like, we do this a lot where we're like, this guy never wanted to be here. He would never be happy with it. It's like, how do you know? You know what I mean? Like, why are we so insecure about this city and this situation? Like, how do you know Odell didn't like being here? How do you know that? You're just kind of like inferring and really just like projecting a lot when people do that. Like, I never understood that. And it seems like Odell, like, the issue with Cleveland was never the city of Cleveland with Odell. He bought a house here. The issue with Cleveland was he didn't feel like the offense and the quarterback and that whole combination of stuff fit his style of play. Now, I don't know if Deshaun Watson changes it enough to where he would want to come back. And honestly, if I were Odell, even if I liked living in Cleveland, I would just have to call it a wrap. You know what I mean? Like, this is one of those situations where it's been 3 years. It hasn't worked out. They cut you. You won a Super Bowl elsewhere. It probably ain't the time to come back, right? Like, this ain't it. So if I were Odell, like, the time has passed for Cleveland. Like, they don't view you in that light that you want to be viewed in. And it's just, I would just be done with the whole situation if I were him. Not anything personal to Andrew Berry or the staff or Deshaun Watson or anything like that. It's just like, sometimes you just got to move on. It ain't got nothing personal to do with anybody. And I think that's where he's at with that whole thing. I don't think he's closed off to it because, hey, if he wants to continue his career, this is one of the better places to do it. But also, I would understand why he would be hesitant to come back, just given all the baggage that he has to deal with coming back here, and the fact that this place kind of represents the worst 3 years of his career, and now everybody wants to go back to it, right? Like, I know everybody here has an experience where they have had probably like the worst year or two of their life in a certain city or a certain job or a certain place, and they ain't never gonna go back to that job because ain't nothing personal about the people that work there or the place. It's just you were at a bad place and you don't want to go back to that energy. You know what I mean? And that's probably where he's at. Jarvis Landry, though, it's a different situation with him. He's definitely open to coming back. He already wanted to play with Watson in Atlanta, so I don't think coming to Cleveland would be that big of a deal, seeing that he already has a house here. So, yeah, I think he would be open to it and be down to doing it. Again, I think a lot of this is going to depend on money and all of that, and if feelings are hurt. But, yeah, I think it's definitely something that could happen. I don't know if it will happen, though. The next question comes from Patrick, who says, after this year, do you think Baker Mayfield will get a multi-year contract with the team as a starter? If so, how much and what team? I don't know, like, if it's this year, but he's definitely capable of getting a multi-year contract. I think Baker Mayfield's best contract I think the contract you want to give a guy like Baker Mayfield is a 2.5-year deal, right? Where it's 2 years and an option. That's what I would do with Baker, right? If I were another team. And I think there's a lot of teams, right? I think Carolina could live with that. Any team that has been sorry for a prolonged period of time that wants to get close to the playoffs, Baker Mayfield is a good option for you, right? If you don't have a quarterback already, and if you're in that situation, you probably don't have a quarterback already, right? Like, let's say it doesn't work with the Jets and Zach Wilson. I think Baker Mayfield would be a good option there just because I think he can get them off the floor, right? Baker Mayfield is good enough to get you off the floor. He ain't good enough to get you into the stratosphere, but he'll get you off the floor. And there's a lot of teams that will see value in that. Again, if Baker Mayfield is a free agent, he's probably going to get a multi-year deal. And look, I think he'll have a decent year this upcoming year. I don't think it's going to be a great year, but I think he'll have a decent year. He's not going to be awful next year. And that'll be enough to get him a decent deal the year after, if he gets an opportunity to start. If not, then I don't know. Like, that could go anywheres. But if he gets an opportunity to start this year, I think it'll be decent. But that's it for this week's Q&A. Again, guys, thank you for asking these questions. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.